Okay, so I'm Ghaleon from Poker Imania, and today we have hand history review type of coaching, and I have got quite a few histories from you guys, and so what's going to happen now is that I make a raffle on the first history that will be selected, and basically you will register into it by commenting something on the English Poker Imania chat. So that is just to make it so that people who are here following the coaching would have the highest possibility to get selected, so to say. It's actually this lists one, I think. So yeah, at least Pikausis is here and Eki. So 4 people at this point. Not sure how many histories there were. So it checked me and my game is still missing, I think. Okay. And my game said that he might have some problems coming into the start, so let's start with these. And Danita won the first round. And hopefully the video and audio side works as it should. There's no additional delay on the stream, so we should have easier time to talk about situations. So this was 6 max turbo. So this is the correct one. And yeah, I don't have the my hard explanations. Of course, it's not going to be helping that much when I don't have huge amount of hands most of the time on the players, but let's open it anyway. Oh, that was wrong one. Okay, should be visible now. So pretty trashy hands on the start. This should be easy one to open. Not hitting. Basically, you can be c-betting here, you can check behind. I think both of those are fine. Good side is that if you do c-bet here, there are some turn cards which are decent to continue. semi-bluffing, for example, club or maybe some king, jack. Well, jack or 10 is kind of bad because villain might be calling with stuff like 10 jack and so on. But check-in is fine as well. You can also bet here on the turn, basically for value and protection, because you do open the flush draw. So you protect your hand a little bit. Usually when villain checks again, he doesn't have like top pair or better here anyway. But I think still just checking is okay as well. Yeah, I seem to have some hands on this beheat fat guy. And I would personally basically always ISO raise here to 120 or so. Ace 10 is going to be good enough. And this guy seems to be pretty limp happy or unknown, most likely at this point, but basically when he limps he's usually weak player. So I would raise to 120 here with ace 10. With ace 9, for example, I would just complete, but I think this hand is strong enough to raise. And sizing wise, I think you could go even a bit bigger, like 80 here. At least the recreational player will always call if he has any 10x type of hand, or most likely with any pair. And I would be just checking the showdown unimproved. And you can be ahead here, but the problem is that 5 high flush draw doesn't have that much value, because you can, even if you hit the flush, you can be, that might not be alive out. Of course you can be ahead here, but he does bet against 2 players, so of course it's unlikely he has king because he didn't bet the flop, and now there's 2 of them, so he might have somewhat value heavy, semi-bluff heavy range here, or bluff heavy, and that might be reason to call, but personally I don't mind to fold here. And yeah, this was the turbo game. Again, isolation raising here, and I would prefer a bit higher sizing when we are out of position. And I would usually be c-betting here, because this board is not going to be hitting the villain. He has a lot of weaker stuff, but it's just that if we check and villain bets here, it's going to be a bit awkward situation, because I don't really want to be check folding either, so I would c-bet like 100 here. Well, that one he wouldn't have probably folded, but turn would have been decent to try to double barrel as well. But usually he has a lot weaker stuff here. And when he checks the flop, I think checking flop is pretty standard, and when villain checks behind, I would always value bet here. Something like 80 to 100. I think that is a bit small. And in here on the river, basically no draws completed, but it can be, well, he might be calling some weaker stuff like ace high or 4x if we bet here, but In general, I think check calling would be line I would choose here, because there are some draws villain can be calling and none of those completes. This is probably, if I would have to guess, it's something like pocket tens quite often from this Regi guy. Kind of surprisingly strong hand in my opinion, but of course if villain snap calls with Jack 8, then it's the best EV line. And this would actually be quite close. Well, he has been limping premium stuff, but he's also limping all the time, so if you think about the situation that you would risk 1300 to win pot of 300, so it's decent risk reward. And usually small blind doesn't have anything to call with, so I think with this stack it would be a pretty decent spot to be shoving. And especially if you had like 1000 behind, then I would always shove here against player like that. So we got into heads up or double. In here, shoving can be profitable, but this is great hand to be defending by calling. So I would pretty much always just call here. And you do shove. I think this is not the type of hand I would prefer, this line. But we can check this sort of situation that villain seems pretty active, so I think this is going to be profitable shoving hand, but I think it's even more profitable by just calling. I suppose he opened 2 PP. Actually had limping absent here as well. So if villain is opening this tight, it's probably not even that profitable, but I would assume he's wider than if he doesn't assume that you are really 3-bet happy. So if he opens 28% and calls 12%, I suppose he would be calling like ace-10 off plus, ace-9 suited plus, probably all block or most pocket pairs he's opening. So I don't think he will be that much tighter than this range. Maybe folding some king-jack suited, king-queen off. But I would assume it would be more likely that he's opening a bit wider. At least like something like that. And at that point it would be really profitable if he doesn't widen his calling range. But yeah, it can be versus active reg, it's going to be decently profitable, but main reason why I would prefer calling is that this hand will play really greatly post flop. And I would prefer shoving, for example, something like, let's say, big or AX, some small suited king, for example. That should be in our shoving range quite nicely, because those will not be that awesome hand to just call. Well, main reason why the smallest pocket pairs are not in button opening range is that he cannot raise call those profitably against Danita here, and those small pockets don't have any sort of blocker value. So basically they are not that great hand to be open raising if PP opponent is aggressive. Three-way pot, great price. You can be calling here, but there is also value from the side that this guy can be doing a lot of bad stuff. If this was suited, I would definitely call here. I think offsuit price is great, but the way the hand is playing in three-way pot, it's not that awesome. And 5-7 suited against regular, I would be shoving pretty much always. And 9 queen. Well, this is kind of, this guy haven't been 3-betting, and it's not that awesome spot to be for small blind to be making like 3-bets when he's so deep against this guy, and I think this PP can be making some absurd cold calls against 3-bets, so this might be okay situation to be in raising because of those reasons. We don't mind to play from position against this PP guy. And this is kind of interesting situation because we saw earlier that this guy called, was it Jack 8 off against really big 3-bet in the early game, so so if we don't have any sort of folding equity here, then this is probably going to be folding hand, even though as default it's always shoving hand. He does fold. Five ten suited might be something I would try to open limp here and see how he reacts if you don't have any reads, because if he's defending a lot, then min raising is quite questionable, and you definitely can't be open shoving here. Oh yeah, I think that was well played. He checks behind and we hit the flush, so I would always bet here. Go for bet line. I think he has some sort of showdown value really often, and he will be calling. I would be pretty surprised if he checks behind this flop and folds to single bet, so I would bet something like a bit over 300, most likely, because I think he will be calling like 320 with same frequency than this sizing. And pretty surprisingly, he does fold. Sort of board that Will Lane should be basically betting almost always with his air, because we don't have huge amount of AX necessary in our range, so we will have huge difficulties to continue against c-bet here with most of our range. Or actually we are deep enough to have some AX, but usually we don't have the big like ace 10 plus or so. A7, I would probably go for raise with these stack sizes. Open shoving, well, it's profitable, but usually I don't really like to make these sort of shoves with extremely deep stacks if you don't have a read that he's, for example, 3-bet shoving really wide against min raise. We can check this one. So I think it's this hand. Yeah, we will make profit, but well, he probably doesn't call wider than this. Even though, of course, when we do make this sort of shove, we never have the premium stuff in our range usually. 10-8, I would probably open raise here. Decently playable hand. And welcome for G riff, if that's how you should pronounce it. And of course always value raising here, like to 300, 360. No, he donk bets. Well, I think he haven't been donk betting so far. Main problem here is that basically we are in decent shape really often here with ace high, but it's just that if he continues to bet on the further streets, it's going to be tough spot to be in, but I would probably still most of the time call here and see if he continues, because it's so unlikely that we would be behind on this flop. Definitely if you have ace of clubs in your hand, you should be calling here. Yeah, stepping flop or turn, definitely. And I would be defending here by calling. This is actually a decent spot to be making check raise. Doesn't hit easily into villain range, and we do have 2 overcards and cut shot if he happens to be calling, if he c-bets here. So I would personally go for check raise here pretty often. I think folding is going to be too weak. What do you guys think? This is going to be one of the, I would say, good flops for our hand. Of course, if we check Sav here, Villain might not believe us and call some A high, but I think any weaker stuff, if he has like something like King high, Queen high, and so on, he will be folding. And good chance that he might be bet folding AX sometimes as well. Yeah, this is c-bet sizing is pretty standard for Villain because this is extremely dry flop. So I like his sizing, whatever he has nuts or air here. Well, Rex should never be betting bot here, but if he does, then I would just fold because I would expect that I don't have any fold equity. But if he bets like 450 or smaller, I would tend to check shove here. Yeah, against this sizing, calling is not bad either, but I think folding is the worst option. Sixes should be shove. And ace 5, I would be shoving as well. We are smaller stack and this as well. Well, you can make non-all-in as well. Of course, one advantage is that this guy can even call and check fold flops. But yeah, we never fold if we make this line pre-flop. And King 7 against this guy, I would be just shoving. I think we have such great fold equity. Well, he does call with worse. But even so, I think his range is going to be weighted toward weaker stuff usually. And yeah, Queen 6 is not going to be good enough to shove. This could be also open limping situation. In here you can go for the open shove. Basically Villain can't call without having big pocket. And 9 queen you can go for min raise. PP probably never folds, but queen 9 is going to be good enough against random range. Six ten. I think it's okay to defend by calling. Folding is not totally nitty either, but definitely anything better like 10-8, 10-7 should be defended. And this deep I wouldn't personally shove this. I think something like 15 pp, 16 pp is okay, but when it goes to 20 pp effectives, I personally don't really like to shove this deep. Basically, I would only shove like small pocket pairs. Okay, defend. Hitting two pairs, definitely betting here like 500 or so. This is due to small sizing. Pretty surprising move. Well, he can be racing with some weaker stuff, like, I mean, if he has slow blade, something like King Jack here for some reason. But I would not shove here, I just call and give him rope to bluff if he so desires. Pretty absurd play, I have to say. This hand should always call the turn and never raise. And his flop check is totally okay, but that turn line is pretty absurd in my opinion. And king 4 I would not be shoving. If we check from the heads of swords, it's 14 pp, so it would be okay. Main problem of this line against good player is going to be that you probably never shove the most premium stuff in your range. So Rex might start to make notice and start to call wider than Nessards would suggest. And at that point it will become really bad. And it will be quite marginal shoving hand anyway. So I would just limp or min raise that. And with this stack size, this would be pretty standard shove hand for me. Villain can even call with weaker stuff. And in here, always shoving. And that ended that one. So I think there was couple of kind of unnecessarily deep shoving situations, in my opinion. So let's go for another one. Go back. Doesn't work. So was there any new players, like hand histories or? No, and I think my game haven't been commenting on the chat. So let's start next one. And now it was Kaikki Peli time. And as always, if someone wants to be hiding their nickname, you can rename for it in history, for example, with your forum nick. Okay, so it has been quite marathon heads up. Well, he has been, on this sample at least, defending really wide and has been quite active from the bottom as well. Well, we are pretty deep here, so I suppose making it a bit bigger than min-raise is fine. Not the greatest of flops to see bet, so I would personally just check behind here. And he bets river ace, which seems pretty suspicious in my opinion. Because if he has jack or good 10, I would suppose he would bet that in turn pretty often in vacuum, so I might consider hero calling here. Of course, this deep he can have AX himself, but when you take check line here, you also have AX personally quite often. And when he's defending this much, I don't think like AX will be that big part of his range, so ace check as default. I would be 3-betting something like 140,000, 150,000 or something like that. And yeah, definitely checking behind. Kind of coordinated board that there will not be that much like straight draws usually, like queen 9 is possible, queen 8, but not much else, but still I would usually call. And yeah, c-betting, I would personally go for like 30,000 or a bit oversizing. Half pot in heads up, especially on this sort of board, is unnecessary. And when he calls, I doubt he's going to be folding better hands. Better hands into second bet usually, because deuce is going to be great hand for any sort of bluff catcher in his range. So I would personally just check behind here. And he calls, and 8 is pretty blank. So, well, jack X or deuce he's never folding. 3 he might fold, might call, because every draw has missed. So it's tough to say. Sometimes villain will call with like ace 5 as bluff catching. But usually I wouldn't assume much fold equity, and if he happens to have, for example, 4-5 or something like that, we beat that. And we might beat some person of his flush draws as well, so would be just giving up. And he had king 3. I don't really like this usually, because if you don't have a read that he limp folds huge amount, because you don't really want to build pot out of position with queen 8. At least I wouldn't want to make that. So if you had like queen 10 for value raising, this would be fine. And if you do make that line, I would always c-bet here. Won't usually hit his range, and if his sleep calling range is going to be weighted toward with mediocre hands, those usually give up here. pretty much same sort of hand that I would be just checking. And this would be pretty standard 30,000 bit over c-bet spot. Well, one of the problems here against recreational players tends to be that they can be making this sort of play with most of AX hands, for example. So, of course, like against sensible looking villain, this would look kind of bluffy move. And at that point I don't mind the click back move to 3-bet here, but the problem against recreational type is that, yeah, they can be making this with all sort of AX in my opinion. And if he has like flush draw, he's not folding that either. And basically when he defends this wide, I think open limping would be good option as well, because you don't have barely any fold equity pre-flop, so you don't have to be building the pot with all sorts of stuff. Yeah, if you have a read, then of course that click back 3-bet is totally fine, and it's most of the time not bad play. In here it's kind of coordinated board, but we have some gut shots. We don't have any showdown value with 8 high, so I don't mind the c-bet. This could be kind of nice barreling card, because if he haven't had like king jack, king queen, queen jack, this is going to be a really scary card in general. But on the other hand, usually recreational players don't like to fold, and we have total air, so because of those reasons I would tend to just give up here. I think in the long run this will be pretty much burning money in my opinion. Yeah, he happened to have that premium hand, but it's just that he might be making check calls with something like any 10x, maybe even some 9x. Again, not the greatest of flops, but decent. This guy doesn't like to fold to c-bets, it seems. Well, if he defends that, then that is going to be pretty standard call. Yeah, always calling here. And when he bets this small, he basically never has much usually. Because if he did have full house or like 9x, I would assume he would be betting bigger. So I would go for raise definitely, but I don't think we should be making that huge raise. Something like maybe 80,000, up to 100,000, I think. Yeah, seabeds in general should be smaller here in the heads up. But I have mentioned about those, and yeah, this is pretty standard double barrel spot. In here, when he makes it pot size almost, I will be just check folding bottom pair. Yeah, interesting point in here, where is the sizing that should we go for? I would personally probably go for something like 240,000 or something like that. And yeah, he doesn't like to fold, as we can see from this hand. And basically means that we should be taking pretty thin 3-barrel value lines. And when he's defending so wide, I don't really see that much point to be raising this total trash hand. What's the point to be betting here? I don't think you get any stronger hands to fold, and well, I think it's more likely he will call like 7x than that he would fold any sort of better hand, so definitely checking behind. Well, this raise is totally fine, but like, again, if you have like weak offsuit ace, I usually like to check more of those, because if I don't assume that villain is folding. Check limp folding huge amount, and he's defending really wide, so he can quite easily hit this sort of flop, so I would definitely just check behind and call here. And 9 is not going to be a great card for you, because if he had any sort of semi-bluff on the turn, almost he pretty much improved, so that is pretty horrible card. And I don't think he will be check folding better hand, so just check behind. Well, this is again something unnecessary. But definitely good c-bet. Wow. Well, I was saying that when he checks here, that we should probably bet like 300,000 at least, because we saw earlier that he's not called with that crappy Jack X on Ace Jack 10 or something board. But yeah, definitely I'm not folding here, but calling is most likely going to be better than shoving. Okay. I suppose that is one possibility. It's just that, does he make that sort of play with any 2-pair combos? And if that's not happening, then there might not be much value in raising here. he happened to have the straight. Eight 5 off is so going to be again basically against good player. This is going to be a losing play because if Villain is calling enough, at least if I check from heads up Nessards, it's up to 3 PP, so it would be like, well, it's pretty close. But it's just that if you are short stack, there's no reason to be making a losing play to just try to drop the villain. Well, this again seems pretty weird because, well, basically when you check pre-flop here, you have been raising huge amount against this limp, so if he's the thinking player at all, you will not have ace or king that much in your range. So this step can be okay, because if he has total air, he might just give up. But when he does call, I would just give up here, because for basically when you shove here, you should never have 3x in my opinion, and it's unlikely you have ace or king that much, so seems pretty bluffy. And we have seen that Villain doesn't like to fold. Yeah, definitely bet calling. And pretty horrible play by this guy. Should always just call that hand with this deep stack. But yeah, I think you have a lot of unnecessarily wide, if that's your standard heads up play, that you raise those limps. You have option for a free flop, and when you have such mediocre hands, I don't see any reason to not take that. Without read, that Villain is limp folding like huge amount of time. So we can take at least one more. Because he's got this one. So it's 180 hyper. So pocket six is definitely shoving here. Deuce six suited, pretty shallow stack shoving, but it's not quite shallow enough, I would say. Well, it's with anti-adjusted, it's just 3 dB. I'm not actually totally sure of this one. If you had like 5-6 suited, it would be definitely call. But I would suppose that this crappy suited hand is still going to be folding hand. We can basically use 80-20 when it's not the final table. Well, if he's shoving 50% or so, it's going to be marginally profitable hand to call with. So, and as we can see here, that against that range, any suited hand is going to be call, but we should be folding the crappiest of suit stuff, unless we have read that the lane is wider. So if he seems active, we should be calling 6 deuce even. And well, depending of the limper, you could be shoving here or flatting, but when there's shove, then you pretty much have to fold. 5-9 suited, BB is almost all in, so no reason to be playing any total crap hand. And here I would be shoving in unopened pot, but usually when this big stack limp here, I would be just folding. Maybe shoving something like king jack or something around that, at least if I assume any sort of folding equity. Let's see if we see showdown. King 10 we should be shoving here, because we have pretty shallow stack and the ICM is not that heavy overall. But let's check what the Hold'em resources calculator says. And this 180-man structure is, I think, like good standard for MTT games as well on the final table. I haven't personally checked, but at least I have heard that it's pretty close to what final tables usually are. So king 10 off. Well, it's going to be break even with these ranges. So it's borderline overall. And if players are wider, then we should be probably folding. Of course, there is also the side that big blind is going to hit us soon, and it's going to be quite big hit. So overall, I would go for the shove here, but fold any like king 9 off definitely. And yeah, definitely shoving queen jack suited. Oh, it's still 2 final tables. Okay. Well, 10 shoving king 10 would have been even better, because there's less ICM side. Well, now it's probably final table. And yeah, calling any 2 with these spot odds. And we do happen to win that. Unopened I would be shoving, but against any limper we have to be folding. And this is going to be easy shoving hand. Queen then off. Yeah, in the king then off spot. Probably. Yeah, it's a bit weaker, but I think still it's going to be shoving hand. And pocket jacks I would be min raising here. Just leave more space for villain to play against you, and with these stack sizes it shouldn't be like trappy looking even against tricky players. And we have to remember that this is $1 game, so I don't think they will be thinking about stuff like that anyway. And pocket threes I would be shoving here, it's going to be profitable. If these two players are like really tight, then you can also min raise and call against BB and fold against these guys. Ace 10 just folding against UTG raise. Maybe something like Ace Queen would probably be something I wouldn't fold here, and something like pocket nines or so. And then Jack seems pretty passive sort of player from this sample. Of course he's also kind of reggy type. This could, well, there is ICM tags as well, but this would actually be quite okay hand to check that what sort of calling range we should have if he's decently wide. So yeah, if he's shoving 40%, then Jack 10 off is a bit outside, but suited would be marginal hand. So it depends heavily on the players, because if we don't have any kind of reads really on the player, I would assume that he's tighter than this, and more likely something like maybe around 30%. And then it would be like king jack, king then suited. Nine jacks just folding. And definitely shoving here. You don't have fold equity probably, but king 9 is going to be pretty nice. Nice hand against random range. And then jack I would be min raising here, try to hide my stack depth a little bit. And well, I haven't checked about how it works in these formats, but there might be some possibility even min raise fold if two players go all in behind you, because this is kind of perfect stack setup for that sort of play with how the stacks are here. But I'm not sure if that is profitable play in these formats. Shoving this fold is just... I would be shoving any two against weak looking player here, if I don't have some reads that he calls wide. Because he has to call really wide to make even do 7 of unprofitable. But queen high is like monster hand basically. So even if he calls almost 70% of hands, it's going to be clearly profitable. And if he happens to be a bit tighter, like 50% calling range, then you can shove any two. And usual mistake of recreational players in these situations are that they are calling way too tight. And then check, definitely we should be min raising or shoving. And ace 10 just shoving. And king 6 you should be calling here. Good call. And I would say that it's perfectly fine shove from the villain as well. And yeah, when he pot size is definitely folding. If he min bets, I might call, might fold. King 4 you should be always shoving here. It's profitable no matter what he does. Here I might consider sometimes to step here. But when he does call, then just give up. And good shove. So that was it. And especially those king high, queen high hands that you didn't shove in the late game of this review, those are really huge mistakes. So you should be checking some of those shoving situations if those are not your default standard shove situations. So let's take one more history. I think my game has not come yet. So we have Eki and eject me. And eject me won the last one. Haven't really recovered from that flu yet, but hopefully soon. You have 98 hands here, so let's jump into halfway. Might be that you have just 2 final tables, but I will actually add later the recommendation of 50 hands because it's going to be quite. Let's start on the 40. it's going to be quite fair for the STT side of games as well. So 7 then suited, but this was 45 men, so how many chips there are? Like 64,000 or something. So we can actually take some of the hand here and quickly check it in the Hold'em resources what the stack size. So yeah, this is final table. Yeah, I will change the recommendation so that it's around 50 hands. Because if they are longer than that, then at least 4 histories is going to be too much. Well, bad side in this situation is that small blind is all in, so we have some chips here if everyone folds that we win always, but not that much. So it will tighten our range, but I think Queen Jack suited is still going to be profitable. This is actually direct bubble situation, but basically we need to be called by bigger stack and we have to, this small blind has to win the three-way pot at that point to not get into monies. So I would assume Queen Jack suited to be good enough, but let's check. Yeah, it's pretty break even, so it's not going to be any sort of crime to be folding, and these ranges are really tight. And I don't think these sort of ranges are never going to be really happening in real life, so yeah, I think it was good fold overall. Seems to be pretty active player, and we are on the PP, so yeah, I think this should be calling hand. But it's going to be close. If I'm not underestimating the ICM side. It's a bit outside of the calling range. And it's pretty wide range, so yeah. I would have been too wide. Most likely. Well, once this button guide rebets, then we have easy fold. Well, King 8 suited we should definitely be shoving here. And Ace Deuce is actually going to be folding hand. I would say it's close with blinds coming onto you. Suited ace you should be shoving, but Yeah, so these crappy aces are going to be quite break even. With FGS2 it might become a bit better, but not that much. But I would definitely shove like ace2 suited. H7 we get great price, but this small blind seems pretty active, which might tighten this player range quite a bit. And it's not like greatest hand over also, just folding. But basically in those situations where you have really short stack, it's going to be okay to call decently wide with hands that play well post flop. And you can just check fold if it's not okay flop to you. And in here I would be shoving. This would actually be good to check with FGS2, but tends to get so much lower. So with FGS1 it's not going to be good enough, but I think with the stack size and how this situation is, it's usually going to be okay to go at least queen 9 off, and I think even queen 8 off might be okay. Let's try with 2. There's just 4 players, so maybe well, that went quickly. So queen 9 off would now be break even shove with PP calling almost 50%, but usually he won't be calling this wide. So if he's a bit tighter, then it should be fine. Well, that was pretty absurd call. Huge ICM tax in that situation. 6 jack I would be shoving. Did I take correct hand? Seems like not. And if I don't have a read that villain is calling really wide here, I would be shoving any 2. Because as you can see, it's 23% calling range, and you can shove almost any 2. Almost any 2, so most of the time shoving any 2 will be better than folding. And here I would shove as well. Pretty good flop, I would always check. And now start betting. Just win bet is totally fine as well. It's pretty scary board. And king 9, he has been pretty active before, so I think limping or min-raise calling would be my options. And in here it's basically okay to be c-betting. Villain should pretty much never have AX. So I might actually c-bet call here if he happens to be check shoving, because it's usually pretty draw heavy range. Villains are check shoving here. So I would be calling here personally, because it should be unlikely that villain would be check raising 5x or 8x here, and if he doesn't have much of AX, then you should be in pretty great shape overall. And king 9 would be pretty standard shoving hand. If you were like 15 BP deep, for example, then flatting would be default play. It's just that now that you don't hit, you pretty much have to be folding, especially on this sort of board. In here I would be flatting. 10-7 suited will have such great equity against white min-raising range. If you have a reason to believe that his range is going to be trap heavy when he min-raises, then you can just fold. And in here I would be shoving. 4-7 suited from the heads up Nash is going to be 14 BP, so definitely profitable. In here I would usually just call. And you should start to bet here, definitely. It's pretty rare that he has flush when he checks the flop. And you should protect your hand, because there are a lot of ugly river cards. For example, that one is not the greatest one. There is still merit in value betting. Other option is to check call. And when he if he had checked, I would usually check behind. When he donks like this, there is no reason to do anything besides calling. And that is one of the weaker or worse turn cards. And he increases his sizing, so I would just give up here. Because if you think like, if he had 6-8, it got straight. If he has flush draw on the flop, it completed. If he had 9-8 for cut shot, it completed. He might have 7x, for example. So, of course, there is like 3-4, 4-6 that you still beat, but pretty like to be stacking off here with this sort of hand. And ace shouldn't really be scare card for you, because, well, 4-3 actually completed now, so. But yeah, if you believe that you are good in turn, then I wouldn't mind calling the river either, but I would just fold the turn card. So yeah, that was the last history for this coaching. 1.5 hour. Hour long is okay. So thanks for the people who did send hand histories and commented on the chat and followed the coaching. Next week we will have the same coaching in Finnish, so there is another chance for Eki, and we can use that same hand history if you want. But for now, good luck if you continue to play, or good night, good dreams if not. But yeah, bye for now.